I'm frightened, Tattersail admitted. Very frightened. Did you see Dujek's face? He knew something, a realization, and it hit him like a dagger in the back.
Time to work, Hairlock called. Callot and Tattersail swung around. A shiver ran through her. Moonspawn had been revolving steadily for the last 3 years. It had just stopped. Near its very top, on the side facing them, was a small ledge, and a shadowed recess had appeared. A portal. No movement showed yet.
He knows, she whispered. And he isn't running, Callot added.
Down on the first hill, High Mage Tayschren rose and lifted his arms out to the sides. A wave of golden flame spanned his hands, then rolled upward, growing as it raced toward Moonspawn. The spell crashed against the black rock, sending chunks hurtling out, then down. A rain of death descended into the city of Pale, and among the Malazan legions waiting in the plain.
It's begun, Callot breathed.
Silence answered Tayschren's first attack, save for the faint scatter of rubble on the city's tiled rooftops and the distant cries of wounded soldiers on the plain. Everyone's eyes were trained upward. The reply was not what anyone expected. A black cloud enshrouded Moonspawn, followed by faint shrieking. A moment later, the cloud spread out, fragmenting, and Tattersail realized what she was seeing. Ravens. Thousands upon thousands of great ravens. They must have nested among the crags and pocks in the moon's surface. Their shrieks grew more defined, a caterwaul of outrage. They wheeled out from the moon, their 15-foot wingspans catching the wind and lifting them high above the city and plain. Fear lurched into terror into Tattersail's heart. Hairlock barked a laugh and whirled to them. "These are the moon's messengers, colleagues!" Madness glittered in his eyes. "These carrion birds!" He flung back his cloak and raised his arms. "Imagine a lord who's kept 30,000 great ravens, well fed!" A figure had appeared on the ledge before the portal, its arms upraised, long silver hair blowing from its head.
Mane of chaos, Tattersail thought. Anomander Rake, lord of the black-skinned Tista Andi, who has looked down on 100,000 winters, who has tasted the blood of dragons, who leads the last of his kind, seated in the throne of sorrow and a kingdom tragic and fey. A kingdom with no land to call its own.
Anomander Rake looked tiny against the backdrop of his edifice, almost insubstantial at this distance. The illusion was about to be shattered. She gasped as the aura of his power bloomed outward.
To see it at such a distance.
"Channel your warrens!" Tattersail commanded, her voice cracking. "Now!" Even as Rake gathered his power, twin balls of blue fire raced upward from the center hill. They struck the moon near its base and rocked it. Tayschren launched another wave of gilden flames, crashing with amber spume and red-tongued smoke. The moon's lord responded. A black, writhing wave rolled down to the first hill. The High Mage was buffeted to his knees, deflecting it, the hilltop around him blighted as the Necrous power rolled down the slopes, engulfing nearby ranks of soldiers. Tattersail watched as a midnight flash swallowed the hapless men, followed by a thump that thundered through the earth. When the flash dissipated, the soldiers lay in rotting heaps, mown down like stalks of grain.
Kuralt Galain sorcery, Tattersail thought. Elder magic, the breath of chaos.
Her breaths coming fast and tight in her chest, Tattersail felt her thigh warren flow into her. She shaped it, muttering chain words under her breath, then unleashed the power. Callet followed, drawing from his Mokra warren. Hairlock surrounded himself in his own mysterious source, and the Kadra entered the fray. Everything narrowed down for Tattersall from then on, yet a part of her mind remained distant, held on a leash of terror, observing with a kind of muffled vision all that happened around her. The world became a living nightmare, as sorcery flew upward to batter Moonspawn, and sorcery rained downward, indiscriminate and devastating. Earth rose skyward in thundering columns. Rocks ripped through men like hot stones through snow. A downpour of ash descended to cover the living and dead alike. The sky dimmed to pallid rose, the sun a coppery disk behind the haze. She saw a wave sweep past Hairlock's defences, cutting him in half. His howl was more rage than pain, instantly muted as virulent power washed over Tattersall, and she found her own defences assailed by the sorcery's cold, screaming will, as it sought to destroy her. She reeled back, brought up short by Callet, as he added his Mokra power to bolster her faltering parries. Then the assault passed, sweeping on and down the hill to their left. Tattersall had fallen to her knees. Callet stood over her, chaining words of power around her, his face turned away from Moonspawn, fixed on something or someone down below on the plain. His eyes were wide with terror. Too late, Tattersall understood what was happening. Callet was defending her at his own expense. A final act, even as he watched his own death erupt around him. A blast of bright fire engulfed him. Abruptly, the net of protection over Tattersall vanished. A wash of crackling heat from where Callet had stood sent her tumbling to one side. She felt more than heard her own shriek, and her sense of distance closed in then, a layer of mental defence obliterated. Spitting dirt and ashes, Tattersall climbed to her feet and fought on, no longer launching attacks, just struggling to remain alive. Somewhere in the back of her head, a voice was screaming, urgent, panicked. Callet had faced the plain, not Moonspawn. He had faced right. Hairlock had been struck from the plain. She watched as a Kenrilar demon arose beneath Nightchill. Laughing shrilly, the towering gaunt creature tore Nightchill limb from limb. It had begun feeding by the time Beladan arrived. The Theluman bellowed as the demon raked its knife-like talons against his chest. Ignoring the wounds and the blood that sprayed from them, he closed his hands around the demon's head and crushed it. Acheronis unleashed gouts of flame from the staff in his hands until Moonspawn almost disappeared inside a ball of fire. Then ethereal wings of ice closed around the short, fat wizard, freezing him where he stood. An instant later, he was crushed to dust. Magic reigned in an endless storm around Tayschren, where he still knelt on the withered, blackened hilltop. But every wave directed his way, he shunted aside, wreaking devastation among the soldiers cowering on the plain. Through the carnage filling the air, through the ash and shrill-tongued ravens, through the raining rocks and the screams of the wounded and dying, through the blood-chilling shrieks of demons flinging themselves into ranks of soldiery. Through it all sounded the steady thunder of the High Mage's onslaught. Enormous cliffs, sheared from the moon's face, and raging with flame and trailing columns of black smoke, fell down into the city of Pale, transforming the city into its own cauldron of death and chaos. Her ears numbed and body throbbing, as if her flesh itself gasped for breath, Tattersall was slow to grasp that the sorcery had ceased. Even the voice shrieking in the back of her mind had fallen silent. She raised bleary eyes to see Moonspawn, billowing smoke and ablaze in a dozen places on its ravaged mien, moving away, pulling back. Then it was past the city, unsteady in its revolutions and leaning to one side. Moonspawn headed south, toward the distant Tarlin Mountains. She looked around, vaguely recalling that a company of soldiers had sought refuge on the blasted summit. Then something had hit her, taking all she had left to resist it. Now, nothing was left of the company but their armor. "Always an even trade, sorceress." She fought against a sob, then swung her attention to the first hill. Tayschren was down but alive. A half-dozen Marines scampered up the hillside to gather around the High Mage. A minute later, they carried him away. Beladan, most of his clothing burned away and his flesh scorched red, remained on the center hill, collecting night chill's scattered limbs and raising his voice in a mournful wail. The sight, in all its horror and pathos, struck Tattersail's heart like a hammer on an anvil. Quickly she turned away. "Damn you, Tayschren!" Pale had fallen. The price was Onearm's host and 4 mages. Only now were the Black Moranth Legion